The security line at Nexus Prime moved like a slow river of fear and metal. Ambassador Daeho Kim watched as the Zenthari guards checked each alien delegate with care that bordered on panic. Their insect-like faces showed no emotion, but their 6 arms moved with nervous speed as they scanned, probed, and confiscated weapons from every species in the galaxy. The Vorthak delegation stood 20 feet ahead. These purple giants with tentacles for arms looked annoyed as guards took away their molecular disruptors. Each weapon could turn a building into dust in seconds. The lead Vorthak made angry clicking sounds as he handed over a device that looked like a simple bracelet but could stop a heart from 50 yards away. Behind the Vorthaks, the crystalline Kalani dimmed their natural glow as they gave up their psychic amplifiers. These beautiful rock-like beings could crush minds with their thoughts, but only when wearing their special crown-like devices. Without them, they were just pretty glowing stones with legs. The Raxian snake people hissed as they surrendered their bioweapons, living creatures that looked like harmless pets but carried enough poison to kill a small city. One Raxian delegate actually cried as guards took away what looked like a cute, furry ball. The ball squeaked sadly as it was placed in a containment box marked with symbols that meant extremely deadly. Daeho carried only a simple black briefcase. No weapons, no gadgets, no anything that could hurt anyone. Bo-Ram Lee, his young aide, stood beside him holding nothing but a tablet computer. Behind them, Security Chief Namsik Park had only his standard diplomatic papers. When they reached the checkpoint, something strange happened. The massive Zenthari guard looked down at Daeho with all 4 of his compound eyes. The alien's mandibles clicked once. Then he stepped aside and waved them through. No scanning, no searching, no questions. Bo-Ram stared in shock. She had never seen anything like this. Every story she heard about these summits involved hours of security checks. Some delegates were searched for entire days before being allowed inside. "Sir," she whispered to Daeho as they walked into the grand hall, "why didn't they search us?" Daeho smiled but said nothing. His old face had the look of someone keeping a secret. The main hall of the Imperial summit was huge beyond imagination. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds formed near the top. Delegates from 12 different species sat at tables arranged in a perfect circle. Each table was designed for a different type of alien body. Some tables had water for the fish-like, a quarry. Others had special gas mixtures for the plant-based phytolians. The human table was simple: 3 chairs, a water pitcher, and some basic earth food. Nothing fancy, nothing threatening. Just 3 humans sitting calmly while surrounded by beings who could destroy planets. Bo-Ram watched the other delegates as they settled into their seats. The Vorthak delegation kept looking at the humans with their large black eyes. Their tentacles twitched every time Daeho moved. The Kalani actually dimmed their light whenever he spoke. Even the proud Raxians, who thought they were the smartest species in the galaxy, seemed nervous around the small human table. "This doesn't make sense," Bo-Ram whispered to Namsik. "Look at them. The Vorthaks could squash us like bugs. The Kalani could boil our brains. The Raxians have poison that works in seconds. Why do they all look scared?" Namsik's weathered face broke into a knowing grin. "Because they learned something important 20 years ago?" "What?" "That humans are far more dangerous without weapons than with them." Bo-Ram frowned. "That's impossible. Look at us. We're tiny compared to them. We have no natural weapons. No poison, no psychic powers, no energy beams. How could we be dangerous? Before Namsik could answer, the summit began. Chancellor Vextar of the Vorthak Empire stood up. His purple skin rippled with barely controlled power. When he spoke, his voice shook the air like thunder. "The trade route through Sector 7 belongs to the Vorthak Empire," he declared. "Any ship that enters our space without permission will be destroyed." The other delegates shifted in their seats. This was not how negotiations were supposed to start. The Vorthaks were being aggressive, threatening. Several species began to reach for weapons that were no longer there. Daiho stood up slowly. He looked tiny next to the massive alien. His voice was quiet and calm. "Chancellor Vextar," he said, "may I suggest a different approach?" The entire hall went silent. Every alien eye, tentacle, and sensor focused on the small human. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. "You want to control Sector 7 because it's the fastest route to the Kalani crystal mines," Daiho continued. "But the Kalani need that route to transport their crystals to market, and 12 other species use that route for basic supplies." Chancellor Vextar's tentacles writhed with anger. "Your point, human? Instead of fighting over one route, why not build 3 new ones?" The hall erupted in confused chatter. Build new routes? Through space? The idea seemed impossible. Daiho opened his simple briefcase. Inside were papers covered in drawings and numbers. Nothing high-tech. Just basic blueprints drawn with pencil on paper. "The Kalani can grow crystal formations in specific shapes," he said, spreading the papers on the table. "The Vorthaks have the strongest ships in the galaxy. The Aquari know every current and flow in space. Working together, you could create trade routes that are faster, safer, and more profitable than anything that exists now." Boram watched in amazement as the entire mood of the room changed. The Kalani began to glow brighter with excitement. The Vorthak's tentacles stopped twitching with anger and started moving with interest. Even the proud Raxians leaned forward to look at the simple human drawings. "This is fascinating," whispered one of the Kalani delegates. "We could shape transit corridors through asteroid fields, create perfect paths for trade ships." "Our ships could clear the way," added a Vorthak captain. "Remove obstacles, provide protection. And our knowledge of space currents could make everything twice as fast," said an Aquari representative, her gills fluttering with excitement. In less than an hour, what had started as a threat of war became a discussion of partnership. Species that had been enemies for centuries were suddenly making plans to work together. Boram stared at her mentor in wonder. "How did you know that would work?" "Because," Daiho said quietly, "humans have learned that the best weapon is not the one that destroys your enemy. It's the one that turns your enemy into your friend." As the day continued, Boram watched Daiho solve problem after problem, with nothing but simple ideas and basic logic. When the Phytolians complained about space pirates attacking their garden worlds, he suggested using their natural ability to grow defensive barriers. When the Makani complained about energy shortages, he showed them how to use waste heat from the Vorthak ships. Every solution was simple. Every idea used things that already existed. Nothing required new weapons or advanced technology, just human creativity applied to alien problems. By evening, Boram finally understood why the security guards hadn't searched them, why the other delegates seemed nervous around humans, why 3 small, weaponless beings could sit safely among the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The most dangerous weapon any human carried couldn't be detected by any scanner. It was their mind, their ability to see solutions where others saw only problems, to find opportunity in every obstacle, to turn any situation into an advantage. As they prepared to leave for the day, Namsik put a hand on Boram's shoulder. "Now you know our secret," he said with a smile. "We don't need weapons because we can turn anything into a weapon. We don't need defenses because we can make our enemies prefer to be our friends. And that, child, is why the galaxy fears us more than any army." Boram nodded, finally understanding. Humans weren't dangerous because they were strong. They were dangerous because they were smart. And in a universe full of powerful beings who thought strength was everything, being smart was the ultimate weapon. Captain Heijin Cho stared out the window of his small ship as Kepler Station grew larger against the stars. The massive space station looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in the darkness. Lights twinkled from thousands of windows where beings from across the galaxy prepared for the most important peace talks in history. "Captain," called Mi Young Song from her seat at the communications console. "Kepler Station is asking for our weapon status." Heijin smiled. "Tell them we have no weapons on board." "Sir? They're asking again? They seem confused." "Tell them again. No weapons. That was the agreement." Mi Young spoke into her headset, then looked back at her captain with a puzzled expression. "They say that's impossible. Every other ship has declared at least some defensive weapons." Engineer Hyun Woo Yoon looked up from his repair work. "Maybe they think we're lying?" "No," said Medical Officer Yoonji Kang from her corner of the small bridge. "They think we're stupid." She was probably right. Humans were the newest species to join the galactic community. Most aliens still thought of them as primitive creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars. The idea that humans would come to peace talks completely defenseless seemed insane to beings who had been fighting wars for thousands of years. The ship docked with Kepler Station without problems. The station was huge inside, bigger than most cities on Earth. The main corridor was wide enough for 50 people to walk side by side. The ceiling was so high that small aircraft flew between levels like mechanical birds. Thousands of beings moved through the halls. Tall purple Vorthax with their tentacle arms. Glowing Kalani that looked like walking crystals. Snake-like Raxians, who slithered instead of walked. Fish-like Aquari in mobile water tanks. Plant-based Phytolians who left trails of sweet-smelling pollen, and dozens of other species that Heijin couldn't even identify. At the security checkpoint, guards took weapons from every other delegation. Heijin watched as the Vorthax handed over devices that could melt steel. The Kalani gave up crowns that could control minds. The Raxians surrendered living creatures that were basically biological weapons. When the human delegation reached the checkpoint, the guards looked confused. "Where are your weapons?" asked the head guard, a massive being, covered in metal plates. "We don't have any," Heijin replied calmly. The guard's mechanical eyes clicked and whirred as they scanned the humans. "No energy weapons detected. No biological weapons detected. No chemical weapons detected. No psychic amplifiers detected." The guard paused, clearly puzzled. "No weapons of any kind detected. This is unusual. We come in peace," Heijin said simply. The other guards exchanged looks. After a moment, they waved the humans through. As they walked away, Heijin heard one guard mutter to another, "Either they're very brave or very stupid." The peace talks were held in the station's great hall. Representatives from 30 different species sat at tables arranged in careful patterns. Each species had brought their best diplomats, their smartest negotiators, their most persuasive speakers. For 3 days, the talks went well. Old enemies shook hands, tentacles, and claws. Ancient disputes were settled with words instead of weapons. Trade agreements were signed. Borders were redrawn. Peace seemed possible. Jin and his small crew served as observers. Humans were too new to have much say in galactic politics, but they were allowed to watch and learn. Mi Young recorded everything for Earth's government. Hyunwoo studied the station's amazing technology. Yoonji analyzed the different alien biologies. On the 4th day, everything went wrong. The first sign of trouble was when the station's lights flickered. Then the artificial gravity stuttered for a few seconds, making everyone float briefly before slamming back down. Emergency alarms began to wail. "Attention all inhabitants," announced the station's computer voice. "Unknown ships approaching. All defensive systems activating." Through the Great Hall's windows, Jin saw them coming. A fleet of biomechanical ships that looked like giant insects crossed with machines. Their hulls were black and shiny, covered in what looked like armor plating grown from living tissue. "Scarix hegemony," whispered a Kalani delegate, his crystal body flickering with fear. "They're supposed to be in deep space. What are they doing here?" The answer came quickly. The Scarix ships opened fire without warning. Beams of energy struck Kepler Station's shields, making them flare bright blue. The massive station shook like a leaf in a storm. "This is impossible," said a Vorthok general, his tentacles writhing with confusion. The Scarix agreed to the peace talks. They signed the non-aggression treaty. More energy beams hit the station. The shields flickered and began to fail. Through the windows, Jin could see Scarix boarding pods launching from their ships like deadly seeds. They never intended to honor the treaty, Mi-young realized, monitoring the enemy communications. "They're jamming all signals to the outside. No one knows we're under attack." The station's defense systems tried to fight back, but the Scarix had come prepared. Their bioships adapted to each weapon that was used against them. Energy beams were absorbed by living armor. Missiles were caught by tentacle-like appendages and thrown back. "All delegates to emergency shelters," announced the station commander over the intercom. "This is not a drill. We are under attack." But there was nowhere to run. The Scarix boarding pods had attached to the station like parasites. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the halls as the invaders burned their way inside. Jin gathered his crew in a side corridor as chaos erupted around them. Aliens who had been making peace just minutes before were now running in terror. The proud Vorthax looked helpless without their weapons. The mighty Kalani seemed dim and frightened. The clever Raxians coiled in corners, unable to defend themselves. "Captain," Hyunwoo said, checking his handheld scanner, "I'm reading Scarix. Biosignatures all over the station. They're not just attacking, they're hunting, moving through the halls and killing everyone they find." "How many?" Jin asked. "Hundreds, maybe thousands." The sound of screaming echoed from the main hall. Through a window, they could see Scarix warriors moving through the diplomatic chambers. The aliens were tall and thin, with skin that looked like black leather crossed with metal. They carried weapons that were part technology, part living creature. "They're executing the delegates," Yoonji whispered, her face pale. "This isn't a raid. It's a massacre." Mi-young was still monitoring communications. "I think I understand their plan. They're going to kill everyone here, then claim that humans did it. Use this as an excuse to start a war against the entire galactic community." Jin felt cold anger building in his chest. The Scarix weren't just attacking Kepler Station. They were attacking the idea of peace itself. They wanted to turn the galaxy's first successful peace talks into the spark that would burn down civilization. "We have to stop them," he said quietly. How? Hyunwoo asked. We have no weapons. They have thousands of warriors with advanced bioweapons. We're 4 humans with nothing but our basic equipment. Hae-jin looked around the corridor. Basic equipment. A maintenance tunnel nearby. Environmental controls. Power systems. Communication arrays. Medical supplies. Cleaning robots. Food processors. To most people, it looked like a simple hallway in a space station. To a human, it looked like an armory waiting to be assembled. You're wrong, Hae-jin said, his voice growing hard. We have everything we need. What do you mean? Mi-young asked. Hae-jin smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. The Scarix made one very big mistake. What's that? They gave us access to an entire space station full of things we can use to kill them. For the first time since the attack began, his crew smiled back. They were humans. They were engineers, communicators, and medics. They had no weapons and no training for war, but they had something the Scarix couldn't understand and couldn't defend against. They had the human ability to look at any environment and see not just what it was, but what it could become. The Scarix thought they were hunting helpless prey. They were about to learn that they had just walked into a trap built by the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Humans with access to technology and a reason to be angry. All right, Hae-jin said, his voice calm and cold. Let's show them what happens when you threaten peace talks that humans are attending. The hunt was about to begin, but the Scarix weren't going to be the hunters. The first Scarix warrior died from what looked like an accident. Hyunwoo had spent 30 minutes working on the environmental controls while the alien death squads hunted through other parts of the station. The engineer's fingers flew over the control panel as he rewrote the atmospheric management system's basic programming. This should work, he whispered to Hae-jin as they watched through a security camera. A group of 5 Scarix warriors was moving down Corridor 7, their bioweapons ready to kill any survivors they found. Now, Hyunwoo said, pressing a button. Fisuo. Air pressure in Corridor 7 suddenly increased to 10 times normal. The Scarix warriors didn't even have time to scream. Their bodies, designed for their homeworld's thin atmosphere, were crushed instantly. Bioweapons that could melt steel were useless against physics. One corridor clear, Hyunwoo reported. But this will only work a few more times before they figure out how to protect themselves. That's fine, Hae-jin said. We don't need to kill them all the same way. While Hyunwoo worked on environmental traps, Mi-young had taken over the station's communication and maintenance systems. Her fingers danced across control panels as she turned the station's helpful machines into instruments of death. I've got control of 60 cleaning robots, she reported, and I figured out how to overload their power cells through the security monitors. They watched as small, innocent-looking cleaning bots rolled toward a group of Scarix warriors in the dining hall. The aliens barely noticed them. Cleaning robots were everywhere on space stations. Harmless, helpful, invisible. The explosions were small but perfectly timed. The robots had been programmed to detonate under the warriors' feet, sending shrapnel from their own weapons into their bodies. Bioarmor that could stop energy beams couldn't protect against metal fragments moving at high speed. Food processors are next, Mi-young said grimly. I'm programming them to create toxic gas when the Scarix try to use them. Meanwhile, Yoonji had turned the medical bay into something from a nightmare. She worked with bottles and vials of basic medical supplies, mixing compounds that should have been used to heal but were now designed to kill. Combat stimulants from adrenaline boosters, she muttered as she worked. Paralytic agents from anesthetics. respiratory toxins from antibiotics. She loaded her deadly creations into the medical station's automatic injection systems. When wounded Scarix warriors came looking for healing, they would find something very different. The beauty of medicine, she explained to Hai-Jin, is that the difference between healing and poison is usually just the dose. Hai-Jin himself moved through the station's maintenance tunnels like a ghost. He had taken apart several food processors and maintenance tools, creating weapons that shouldn't exist. Magnetized eating utensils became deadly projectiles. Cleaning chemicals became explosive compounds. Even the artificial gravity generators could be turned into crushing traps. The Scarix had expected to fight diplomats and peaceful delegates. They had prepared for energy weapons and conventional defenses. They had no idea how to fight an enemy that turned every mundane object into a weapon. Through the security cameras, the human team watched as confusion spread through the Scarix ranks. Warriors who had been confidently hunting through the station now moved carefully, suspiciously. They had lost 30 soldiers to accidents and malfunctions that couldn't possibly be accidents. Squad leader Vex Thul, one warrior reported, over the communications channel that Mi Young had hacked. The air itself attacks us. The machines turn against us. Even the walls seem hostile. Impossible, replied the squad leader. This is a civilian station. There are no weapons here, no defenses. Continue the hunt. But the warriors were getting scared, and scared Scarix made mistakes. A group of 6 warriors entered the station's recreation area looking for hidden delegates. The room was full of exercise equipment, games, and entertainment systems from dozens of different species. To the Scarix, it looked harmless. Hai-Jin had spent an hour preparing this room. The exercise equipment had been rewired to deliver electrical shocks. The games had been programmed to explode when activated. Even the floor had been treated with a chemical compound that would eat through bio-armor in minutes. The first warrior stepped on the treated floor and immediately began screaming as his armor dissolved. The second warrior tried to help him and touched a piece of exercise equipment that sent 10,000 volts through his nervous system. The third warrior backed away and leaned against a wall panel that Hai-Jin had turned into a pressure-sensitive explosive. The 3 survivors fled the room, but not before Mi Young's hacked cameras recorded everything. She broadcast the footage to all the Scarix communication channels. "Let them see," she said coldly. "Let them know that nowhere on this station is safe." The psychological effect was immediate. The Scarix warriors began moving in larger groups, checking every surface, testing every piece of equipment before using it. Their confidence was gone. They jumped at shadows and hesitated before entering new areas, but the humans weren't done. Yunji had discovered something interesting about Scarix biology while analyzing the security footage. Their regenerative abilities, which made them so hard to kill, depended on specific chemical signals in their bloodstream. "I can disrupt those signals," she explained to the team. "Turn their healing ability against them." She began releasing modified medical compounds into the station's air system. The chemicals were harmless to every other species, but would cause Scarix healing systems to go haywire. Instead of repairing damage, their bodies would attack their own healthy tissue. The effect was slow but devastating. Scarix warriors who had seemed unstoppable began collapsing as their own biology turned against them. "This is Squad Leader Keth Vor," came a panicked voice over the communications channel. "My warriors are dying from unknown toxins. We need immediate medical support." "Negative," replied their commander. "Continue the mission. Eliminate all witnesses." But eliminating witnesses had become impossible. The witnesses were fighting back with weapons that the Scarix couldn't understand or counter. Hyunwoo had turned the station's gravity generators into selective crushers. He could increase gravity in specific areas to 20 times normal, pinning Scarix warriors to the floor while leaving other areas unaffected. Rescue teams trying to help their fallen comrades would suddenly find themselves unable to move as their own weight became unbearable. Mi Young had weaponized the food systems throughout the station. Replicators that the Scarix tried to use for nutrition instead produced clouds of toxic gas. Water dispensers released acid. Even the simple vending machines had been turned into explosive devices. They're starting to avoid all the station's technology, Mi Young reported. They won't touch anything electronic. Good, Hei Jin said. That makes them predictable. He had prepared for this. Simple mechanical traps made from maintenance equipment, pressure plates that triggered falling debris, tripwires connected to improvised explosives made from cleaning supplies, spring-loaded spears made from kitchen utensils. The high-tech Scarix warriors found themselves defeated by technology so basic it seemed primitive. They could adapt their bio-armor to stop energy weapons, but they couldn't protect themselves. From a sharpened table leg launched by a spring made from exercise equipment. As the hours passed, the hunters became the hunted. Scarix warriors who had entered the station confident and aggressive were now scared and desperate. They moved through corridors like prey animals, knowing that death could come from any direction. "We need to retreat," one warrior reported to his commander. "The station is cursed. The very air fights against us." "No retreat," came the cold reply. "Complete the mission or die trying." Hei Jin smiled grimly as he listened to the intercepted communication. "Then they'll die trying." The four humans had turned a peaceful space station into a death trap using nothing but basic equipment and their understanding of science, engineering, and biology. They had proven that the most dangerous weapon wasn't always the most advanced one. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon was the human mind given access to a hardware store. The Scarix were about to learn that lesson in the most painful way possible. The war prime of the Scarix hegemony was not used to fear. Standing 12 feet tall with bio-armor that could stop starship weapons, he had conquered 17 worlds and destroyed entire fleets. His very presence made enemies surrender before fighting began. But now, as he stalked through the corridors of Kepler Station, he felt something he had never experienced before. Uncertainty. "War Prime," reported Captain Zethka, one of his few surviving officers. "We have lost over 300 warriors to accidents." "Accidents," the War Prime repeated, his voice like grinding metal. "You call this accidents?" He gestured at the carnage around them. Bodies of his elite warriors lay twisted in corridors, killed by everything from poisoned air to exploding cleaning robots. His biosensors detected traces of at least 20 different toxins in the atmosphere, all designed specifically to target Scarix physiology. "This was planned," he growled. "But by whom? The station was checked. No weapons, no defenses, only diplomats and peace lovers." "Perhaps one of the other species," Captain Zethka began. "No." The War Prime cut him off. "The Vorthax think only in straight lines. The Kalani cannot kill without their amplifiers. The Raxians are clever, but not this clever. This is something else." Through his biolink with the station's systems, the War Prime accessed security footage from the past 6 hours. What he saw made his ichor run cold. 4 small beings, bipedal, soft-looking, moving through maintenance tunnels with no armor, no visible weapons. no special abilities. But wherever they went, his warriors died in ways that seemed impossible. Humans, he whispered. The new species. The ones they said were primitive. He watched as one of the humans, a female, mixed common medical supplies into compounds that turned his warriors' own healing abilities against them. Another, an engineer, rewrote atmospheric controls to create pressure weapons from thin air. A third turned the station's helpful machines into an army of killers, and their leader. The War Prime watched as this small, unremarkable human moved through the station like death itself. Using nothing but maintenance tools and basic chemistry, he had created weapons that the War Prime's bio-armor couldn't stop and his tactical computer couldn't predict. "Find them!" the War Prime ordered. "All of them! Bring them to the central hub alive!" War Prime. Perhaps we should retreat. The War Prime's bioweapon arm extended and pierced Captain Zethka through the chest. "We do not retreat from primitives." But, even as he gave orders, the War Prime felt doubt creeping into his mind. These humans had done something that no enemy had ever accomplished. They had made him afraid. In the maintenance tunnel beneath the central hub, Hai-Jin checked his improvised weapons one last time. He had 3 explosive devices made from food processor components, a projectile launcher built from exercise equipment, and a chemical sprayer filled with Yunji's most lethal creation. "They're hurting us," Mi-Young reported, monitoring Scarix communications. "The War Prime wants us alive." "Good," Hai-Jin replied. "That means he's scared." "Or angry," Hyun-Woo pointed out. "Very, very angry. Fear and anger make people stupid," Yunji said calmly. "And we need him to be stupid." The plan was insane. Instead of hiding, they were going to confront the most dangerous warrior in the Scarix military directly. 4 humans with improvised weapons against a being that could destroy buildings with his bare hands. But they had one advantage. The War Prime expected them to think like soldiers, to use tactics and strategy that made sense to a military mind. He didn't expect them to think like humans. They emerged from the maintenance tunnel into the central hub of Kepler Station. The massive chamber was designed for ceremonies and large gatherings. Now it was empty except for bodies of delegates who had tried to find safety here. The War Prime waited for them in the center of the room, surrounded by his 12 remaining elite guards. Even wounded and reduced in numbers, they were still the most dangerous fighting force in the galaxy. "So," the War Prime said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The famous humans. I have watched your work. Impressive for primitives." Hai-Jin stepped forward, his hands empty, his expression calm. "We're not primitives, we're engineers," the War Prime laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Engineers? You think your simple tricks frighten me? I have destroyed civilizations that had weapons you cannot imagine." "I believe you," Hai-Jin replied. "But they were thinking about weapons wrong." "Wrong?" "They thought weapons were things you carry, things you build specifically to kill." Hai-Jin gestured around the chamber. "We think everything is a weapon. The air you breathe, the ground you stand on, the gravity that holds you down, even your own biology." The War Prime's bio-armor began to glow with contained energy. "Enough talk. You will tell me how you did this, and then you will die slowly." "Actually," Hai-Jin said, reaching into his pocket, "we're going to do something else." The device he pulled out looked like nothing special. Just a small box made from components taken from the station's quantum communication array. Mi-Young had spent 3 Hours building it while the others fought the Scarix advance forces. "What is that supposed to be?" the War Prime sneered. "Another of your primitive weapons?" "Not a weapon," Mi Young said, stepping up beside her captain. "A key." She had spent days analyzing the station's biometric sensors, collecting data on every species present for the peace talks. Heartbeat patterns, brainwave frequencies, cellular structures, everything that made each species unique, including the specific neural frequency that triggered the Scarix hibernation reflex. "You see," Yunji explained, "every species has biological triggers, things that activate automatic responses. Humans have many of them, but the Scarix have one that's very interesting." The device began to hum softly. The sound was barely audible, but it was broadcasting a very specific pattern of electromagnetic pulses. "Your species evolved on a world with massive electromagnetic storms," Yunwu said. "When those storms hit, you had to shut down all biological activity to survive. Hibernation, complete biological shutdown. It saved your ancestors' lives." The War Prime's eyes widened with understanding. "No, that frequency is lost, forgotten. Our ancestors evolved past the need—" "Evolution doesn't work that way," Yunji interrupted. "The reflex is still there, hidden in your genetic code, waiting." The device reached full power. The electromagnetic pulse that filled the chamber was precisely calibrated to match the frequency of the ancient storms on the Scarix homeworld. The War Prime tried to resist. His bioarmor flared with energy as he fought against millions of years of genetic programming. His warriors raised their weapons, but their hands were already beginning to shake. "This is impossible," the War Prime gasped. "We are the perfect warriors. We cannot be—" His words cut off as his eyes rolled back. The hibernation reflex, dormant for millennia, activated with irresistible force. One by one, the elite guards collapsed as their bodies shut down into protective comas. The War Prime was the last to fall. His massive frame toppled like a felled tree, hitting the deck with a sound like thunder. "Is he dead?" Mi Young asked. "No," Yunji replied, checking her scanner. "Just sleeping. He'll wake up in about 10 hours with the worst headache in galactic history." Through the chamber's windows they could see the Scarix fleet retreating. Without their War Prime's biolink commands, the ship's automated systems had activated emergency protocols and begun withdrawing to safe distance. "That's it?" Hyunwoo asked. "We won?" "We survived," Hai-Jin corrected. "And we proved something important." "What's that?" "That the most dangerous weapon any human carries isn't something we build or buy or steal." He looked around at his small crew, these ordinary people who had just defeated the galaxy's most feared military force. "It's our ability to understand, to learn, to take any situation and find a way to turn it to our advantage." Mi Young was already working on restoring the station's communication systems. "I'm getting signals from multiple rescue fleets. They'll be here within hours." "Good," Hai-Jin said. "We need to make sure the other delegates are safe. And we need to document everything that happened here." "Why?" Yunji asked. "Because," Hai-Jin replied, looking down at the sleeping War Prime, "the galaxy needs to understand something. Humans don't make war the way other species do. We don't conquer through strength, or intimidate through size, or dominate through superior weapons." "Then how do we win?" Mi Young asked. Hai-Jin smiled. "By making our enemies too tired to fight." The Battle of Kepler Station was over. 4 humans with no weapons had defeated a force that could have conquered worlds. But more importantly, they had shown the galaxy what happened when you threaten people under human protection. The universe would never look at humanity the same way again. 20 years later, Bo-Ram Lee stood in the same security checkpoint where her journey of understanding had begun. But now she was no longer the confused young aide watching in wonder as guards waved humans through without searching them. Now she was Ambassador Bo-Ram Lee, and she was the one being waved through. The Zenthari guard's 4 compound eyes looked down at her with what she had learned to recognize as respect mixed with caution. His mandibles clicked once, the traditional greeting for human diplomats. Then he stepped aside without a word. Behind her, the new aide, a young man named Junho Park, stared in amazement. "Ambassador, they're not going to search us at all?" "No," Bo-Ram replied calmly. "They're not. But why? The Kalani delegation just spent 3 hours being checked. The guards took apart every crystal they brought. The Vorthax had to surrender. Weapons I've never even heard of." Bo-Ram smiled, remembering asking the same questions 2 decades ago. "Because we taught them something important." The Imperial summit had changed since the Kepler Station incident. The Great Hall was larger, now designed to accommodate 47 species instead of 12. New races had joined the galactic community, drawn by stories of successful cooperation and peaceful resolution of conflicts. At the center of it all sat the human delegation. 3 people at a simple table with water, basic food, and no visible defenses of any kind. Yet every other species in the room watched them with careful attention. "Today's dispute," Junho read from his tablet, "is between the Mekani Collective and the Crystalline Empire. The Mekani want to build automated factories in the asteroid belt. The Crystallines say the electromagnetic fields will interfere with their meditation crystals." "Sounds simple enough," Bo-Ram said. But it wasn't simple. The Mekani were a species of artificial intelligences who thought in pure logic. The Crystallines were energy beings who communicated through harmonic frequencies. They had been arguing for 6 months without finding any common ground. The Mekani representative, a sleek robot with glowing blue circuits, spoke first. "The asteroid belt designated Mining Zone 7 contains optimal materials for our industrial needs. Our calculations show 99.7% efficiency in this location." The crystalline delegate, a being that looked like living light shaped into geometric patterns, responded with a sound like singing crystal. The translator rendered it as the harmonic. "Disruption from mechanical operations will create chaos frequencies that damage our younglings' development." Back and forth they went. Logic versus emotion. Efficiency versus harmony. Progress versus tradition. The same arguments that had been going in circles for months. Bo-Ram listened patiently for an hour. Then she stood up. "May I suggest something?" she said quietly. The entire hall fell silent. Every alien eye, sensor, and perception organ focused on the small human woman. "The Mekani need mineral extraction," she continued. "The crystallines need harmonic stability. These aren't opposite needs. They're complementary ones." "Explain," said the Mekani representative. Bo-Ram opened her briefcase, the same simple black case that Dae-Ho Kim had carried 20 years ago. Inside were papers covered in hand-drawn diagrams and basic mathematical equations. Crystalline harmonic frequencies can be used to refine metal at the molecular level, she explained, spreading the drawings on the table. Much more efficiently than heat or chemical processing. And mechanical vibrations from mining operations can be tuned to enhance crystal growth instead of disrupting it. The crystalline delegate brightened, literally. His light form pulsed with excitement. "Symbiotic resonance? Using industrial vibrations to create growth harmonics? Exactly, Boram said. The Makani get their minerals refined to higher purity than ever before. The crystallines get enhanced growth environments for their young. Everyone benefits. Within 2 hours, what had been an unsolvable conflict became an eager partnership. The Makani were already calculating improved efficiency rates. The crystallines were composing harmony songs about technological cooperation. Junho watched in amazement as his ambassador solved a 6-month diplomatic crisis with nothing but paper, pencil, and simple logic. "How did you know that would work?" he whispered. "Because," Boram replied, "I learned from the best." As the day progressed, more conflicts arose. The Aquari complained about space traffic disrupting their migration routes. The Phytolians worried about contamination of their garden worlds. The Raxians demanded exclusive trading rights to certain star systems. Each time, Boram found solutions that turned opposition into cooperation. The Aquari's knowledge of space currents could help other species navigate more safely. The Phytolians' biological expertise could clean up contaminated worlds. The Raxians' desire for exclusive trading could be satisfied by giving them management. Contracts that benefited everyone. "It's like magic," Junho said during a break. "You make everyone happy without giving anyone what they originally wanted." "That's not magic," said a new voice. "That's just human thinking." They turned to see Commander Thaxil of the Zenthari security force approaching. The massive insectoid being moved with surprising grace for something that looked like an armored tank with legs. "Commander," Boram said with a polite bow, "how can I help you?" "I wanted to speak with your aide," Thaxil replied, his translated voice carrying an odd tone. "To explain something that all new human diplomats should understand." Junho straightened nervously. Being addressed directly by a Zenthari commander was like being noticed by a living war machine. "Young human," Thaxil began, "do you know why we do not search your delegation?" "Because you trust humans," Junho guessed. "No," Thaxil replied, bluntly. "We do not trust anyone. We are security forces. Trust is not in our programming." "Then why?" "Because your species frightens us." Junho blinked in confusion. "Frightens you? But we're so small. We have no natural weapons, no energy beams or bio-armor or psychic powers." "Exactly," Thaxil said. "And that is what makes you terrifying." The commander gestured around the great hall. "Look at the other species. The Vorthax are strong, so they solve problems with strength. The Kalani are psychic, so they solve problems with mental power. The Raxians are clever, so they solve problems with intelligence." "That makes sense," Junho said. "But humans," Thaxil continued, "humans have no single advantage, so you learn to use everything. You see weapons where we see tools. You find opportunities where we see only obstacles. You turn any situation into an advantage." Boram watched as understanding dawned on Junho's face. "A Scarix with a plasma cannon can destroy a building," Thaxil explained. "A human with a maintenance kit can destroy an empire. This is why we fear you. Not because you are stronger than us, but because you make strength irrelevant." "The Kepler station incident," Junho whispered. "Yes, 4 humans with no weapons defeated a force that could have conquered star systems. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by understanding the universe in ways we never imagined." Thaxil paused, his mechanical eyes clicking as they focused on Junho. "We learned that day that giving humans access to any environment makes them more dangerous than simply allowing them to carry conventional weapons. Your minds are weapons that cannot be detected by any scanner. Your creativity is a force that cannot be contained by any armor. Your adaptability is a power that cannot be countered by any strategy. So you don't search us because we know that the most dangerous thing any human carries cannot be taken away. Thakzil finished. It is built into the way you think. The way you see problems as puzzles to be solved rather than walls to be broken. As if to prove his point, an alarm began sounding in the Great Hall. Emergency lights flashed as the station's computer announced, "A crisis. Attention all delegates. The food processing systems have malfunctioned. Dietary requirements for 17 different species cannot be met. Estimated time until critical nutritional shortages, 6 hours." Panic began to spread through the hall. Many species had very specific dietary needs. The Aquari required special salts that existed nowhere else in this star system. The Phytolians needed particular minerals that took days to synthesize. Without proper nutrition, some delegates would become seriously ill within hours. "We must contact our home worlds for emergency supply ships," declared a Vorthak general. "That will take days," replied a Kalani representative. "Some of us will not survive that long." "Perhaps we should adjourn the summit," suggested a Raxian diplomat. Boram stood up quietly and walked to the main computer terminal. Her fingers moved quickly across the interface as she accessed the station's systems. "Actually," she said calmly, "we can solve this in about 20 minutes. "How?" demanded the Vorthak general. "The medical bay has synthesizers for creating pharmaceuticals," Boram explained, her hands never stopping their work. "The terraforming systems have mineral processors for atmospheric adjustment. The recycling centers have molecular separators for waste management." Junho watched in fascination as his ambassador rapidly reprogrammed 3 different systems to work together. "We can use the molecular separators to break down available materials into base elements," she continued. "Run those elements through the mineral processors to create the compounds we need. Then use the medical synthesizers to combine everything into proper nutrition for each species."